Hi, I'm Rob from Longhead Music, and this is my review of the Marshall G100R CD guitar amplifier. Now this guitar amplifier's got a load of different features. Across the front panel here we've got the normal channel, which has got two different gain stages, a clean setting and a crunch setting for a bit of extra crunch there. It's got a gain control, bass, middle and treble, and then you've got the channel selector. Hit in that channel selector and that gives you all these options on the boost channel, which has got a lot more settings here. We've got two different gain stages, two different basically distortion sounds. The gain knob, which would you believe goes all the way up to 20, as you can see. 3-band EQ, bass, middle and treble. A contour, which I'll explain a bit later on. It's a bit unusual to see one of these on a guitar amp, but it does make the distortion sound nice. And the volume control for that boost channel. Over in the master section here, we've got effects send and return with two different loop levels, so you can use lower volume stuff if you want to. An effects mix, which is really cool. It means you can mix between your delays and your reverbs that are going through this send and return here, which is really nice. A reverb, a spring reverb, which you can turn on and off like that, and the master volume. Now this is a 100-watt guitar amplifier. It's a really loud amp, so you'll see I've only got this on one pretty much for the whole of the review here, because it's a pretty powerful beast. And at the moment I've not got it twinned with the standard cabinet that would come with an amp like this. I've actually got it twinned with a slightly nicer cabinet, which is this model VS412. It's a 4x12 cabinet, 8 ohms, and it's a 140-watt cabinet. So the amp's 100 watts, the cabinet can handle 140. You're not going to blow any speakers, basically. Now this amp is not to be confused with the Marshall MG series amps, which look kind of similar because the controls are at the top rather than on the valve amps where the controls are at the bottom. This is not a valve amp, it's a solid state transistor amplifier, but it does sound pretty darn good. The MG series, in my opinion, Marshall made a bit of a mistake by adding loads of digital effects, and they don't sound very nice to my ears. They're not a particularly good amp as far as I'm concerned. But with these amps, this is all 100% analog circuitry. There's no digital crap inside this amp. It's called a 100R CD. The CD stands for the CD input, which it has on the back, which some users might find kind of useful. I've never used it, but it could be useful if you're practicing, if you're learning stuff. That's cool. It's got a line output on the front here, which is really nice. It means that basically if you're recording anything in a studio or something like that, and you don't want to mic up the amplifier itself, you can take a line out directly from there into your audio interface, your analog to digital converter, and then use various effects inside the computer to actually emulate the sound of speakers. Now, because this is a transistor amp, it's not a valve amplifier, that also gives us one other really awesome thing that we can do, which if it was a valve amp you couldn't do, and that is unplug the speaker. Because valve amplifiers have to have a very specific output impedance, so the speakers have to look like they're maybe 4, maybe 8, maybe 16 ohm impedance. Because this is a transistor amplifier and it's completely solid state, you can unplug the cab and you can put headphones in or whatever, You know, it's got a line out, so you could plug that into a headphone amplifier and jam away all day long. You can't do that with a valve amp. You need to use some sort of power break. So that's a really interesting kind of added feature there for if you're using this in a recording environment. Of course, at least half of the sound is from the cabinet, so if you want an ultimate guitar tone, best thing to do is to mic up these speakers here. Now, as I said, the cabinet is slightly nicer than the usual model, and as you can see, it's not quite as wide. The head isn't quite as wide as the cabinet, but it does give you a slightly cooler tone. And I don't know the type of speakers that are inside this cabinet, but it's you know, it's a nice cabinet. Right, I'm going to show you all the different features on this amp, how to use it, and even though I'm only using this little microphone from this iPhone, hopefully you'll get a little bit of a better idea of how it sounds, which will help you kind of decide if you want to get one for yourself. Okay, so turning on this guitar amplifier is really pretty simple. Unlike valve amps where you have an on switch and a standby, transistor amps come on instantly, so you don't need that feature. So it's just the one power switch on this this amp, which is makes life a bit easier. Now I've currently got it set, as you can see. I'll just focus this there. So the volume's on next to nothing. This is because it's a really quite a powerful amp, and if I go full out in this tiny room, this is suitable for playing with in bars, in clubs, or on huge big stages, because you've got enough power for when you need it. I've got the reverb off. I'll explain why that is later on. Effects loop off. I'm just using the normal channel, and I'll show you the difference between the two clean and crunch sounds on the normal channel. Now, as I say, this is an iPhone microphone. I'm just going to stick it in front of the guitar amp there. Hopefully you can still hear me talking and also hear a bit of the guitar amp. So here we go. So this is the crunch sound, and you can hear it kind of breaking up a little bit. If I take that button out, we're just left with the clean sound. Now, I really like this crunch. This is one of my favourite things about the amp, is the clean channel's crunch. Because you can have a slightly distorted sound with quite a bluesy kind of tone. I quite like that kind of music on the normal channel, and then on the boost channel have your lead sounds, which is really cool. There isn't a foot switch included with it, but you could plug a foot switch in there for switching, I believe, the channel and the reverb. It's a standard Marshall foot switch. So this is the crunch sound again. And here's the clean sound again. So it's got a fairly nice clean tone. If I switch back to the crunch sound. And as you can see up the top here, we've got bass, middle and treble knobs both on the clean channel and on the lead channel, which is really cool. You don't see that too often. and they're all about middle at the moment. So you know, you could go, you can do everything from, you know, really middle sound to a really kind of rock, kind of, you know, smiley curve sound. So there's loads of different range of tones that you can get using this, the clean channel on the amplifier. Now, if we turn that off and switch over to the lead channel over here, just check the volume's not too deafening. That's okay. We've got the two different types of lead distortion depending on how kind of metal you want to go with it. So we'll try the normal one, which is more of a kind of rock heavy overdriven sound, and you can have a listen to that. Okay, so that's kind of all right. Sorry, I should really tune this guitar before I started this, but there you go. Now, if I switch that to the really extreme overdrive kind of sound, have a quick listen to what that sounds like. So as you can hear, there's absolutely heaps of gain there, plenty to be getting on with. I'm just going to quieten the amp down a little bit. So let's have a look at some of the controls that you've got here. So we've got, similar to the other channel, bass, middle and treble. That's fairly self-explanatory. Don't want to go into too much depth here. We've got the contour. Now this is quite an interesting control. This gives you power over the distortion, power over the equalizer in the amp. Every guitar amp has a kind of smiley curved equalizer curve, and this gives you the option, the ability to shape the distortion to how you like it, how you think it needs to be on any particular song. So I'm just going to show you on the with the button out there, so the normal kind of rock distortion. I'm going to show you kind of the different sounds that you can get by twisting that knob. So let's we've heard it in the middle section there. Let's make it the contour low, and this actually makes the amp more high frequency. You get more treble out of it, so you'll see what I mean. So sorry, got that the wrong way round. Anyway, I've just twisted that knob up to high contour, so let's listen to that. So as you can see, that has a huge effect on the sound of the distortion, just using that contour knob. Now I like it kind of either central or slightly lower than central, and that gives it this kind of classic Marshall-y tone, which you just heard towards the end of that. So now let's flick it onto the other channel, and we'll just see what a difference it makes. So, as you can see, loads of different options there, and huge amount of gain headroom, so you can really go for those kind of like heavy metal sustained kind of solos that need the really long sustain. And this I believe it only has single coil pickups, so you know, if you use this on a big Les Paul or something, you're going to have heaps of sustain, which is lovely. So those are the settings on the front there. Like I said, you've got your volume on the master there. You've got a line out, and that's where your foot switch gets connected. You've got this send and return effects loop, so you can have loads of different kind of sounds going on there. And you've got you can kind of mix in the dry and the affected sound from that effects loop with this knob, which is you don't see that on many of the amps, only the really high end ones, which is cool. And the spring reverb, it's not a digital reverb, it's a real spring inside the amp, which is cool, and I'll show you that round the back in a bit. So this is the back of the amp. You've got your power lead going in there. This was Pat tested a while ago, so still got the sticker on there. These are your speaker outputs. It doesn't matter which one you plug these into. It can run at 4 ohms, I believe. Yes, 4 ohms it says over here. 100 watts RMS into 4 ohms. This is an 8 ohm cabinet, so you could add another 8 ohm cabinet to make it 4 ohms using that number 2 output there. And that's your CD input, which makes this, which is why it has the model number with CD on the end. And I'll show you around the back of this cabinet as well. It's fairly simple. It's just one cable input there, and this is the sticker here, the plate that says VS412 8 ohm cabinet. This here is the reverb spring on the back of the amp. Now let's talk a bit about condition. I only discovered this the other day when I was testing it, but I couldn't get any sound when I turned the reverb on. Now, because this is an analog reverb, there's actually a big spring in the back of the amplifier which creates that reverb. I can't think that there can be too many things that have gone wrong with it. But if I take you around the back of the amp here, I'll show you this spring has it has both an input and an output, which comes out on these phono connectors. As you can see, this lead is stretched quite a long way here. So if I was going to hazard a guess as to what was broken with the amp, I'd say that it was that black lead. The red one over this side, which is the output from the spring, really isn't stretched very far at all, and if I put my fingers across the contacts there, you can hear it buzzing, so I know that that's working fine. It must be the input to the spring there which has got the problem. Like I say, this is a real spring here, so it's actually got, in fact you can just see the corner there of the one of the actual springs that's inside there. What it does is wobble the spring at one end, and then at the other end pick up the wobbles, and that makes the cool kind of classic guitar amplifier reverb that everyone knows and loves. And this does not have a digital reverb in it. It's you know, unlike the MG series amps, which came after this one that Marshall made. And that, as far as I know, is the only problem with the amp itself. I'll show you the underneath of the cabinet. Okay, so I've just turned this amp on its side to show you. Now there used to be some feet on the bottom of this cabinet here. At some point, as it's been moved about when I've been gigging it, two of the feet came off or have got lost or something. So I still have two of the original feet downstairs, which I'll include in the auction. But in order to stop it from scratching floors or being slightly cockeyed when it was standing up, I took off the two remaining feet from the bottom of here. I'm not too fussed about having feet on it. I suppose it's caused a few little scratches on these corner pieces, which wouldn't have been there originally, but you could always buy a couple of more rubber feet or something to stick on the bottom of the amp if you wanted to. There are the usual kind of, there are a few different scrapes around the back here. I mean, this amp has been gigged. It's been used with normal use, I would say. However, I don't see many. As you can see, that's just a mark on the vinyl there, and there are a few scuffs, but it's not in too bad condition really. I'll just bring the head back over now. Okay, so there's a little bit of tearing of the vinyl on the bottom of the head here, where it's been lent on various different things. But this one's got all of its feet remaining, and I can't see any particular bashes or marks on the amp itself. And the top of the amp looks fairly good. So to sum up condition wise, the only thing to bear in mind is that the reverb doesn't seem to be working at present. As I say, I'd hazard a guess, because a spring reverb there isn't much that can really go wrong with it. It's very simple, so I would have thought that it was that cable that's been stretched that may have got pulled at some point and caused caused the reverb to break. So a quick taking to piece of the amp and replacing that phono cable would be my first port of call. Unfortunately, I didn't notice that till the other day. Otherwise, I would have repaired it before a buyer purchased it. But that's just one of those things. Unfortunately, I can't do that. Don't have the time to do that right now. But if it doesn't sell on its on the auction, then I'll probably do that before relisting it. It's a gorgeous amp. the first guitar amp that I ever owned, and I've played it loads of different places over the years. Unfortunately, I'm now a recording engineer. I run a studio. Don't have that much room in the studio, and we do have a lot of guitar amplifiers, and this one's got to go because it takes up a lot of space, whereas all the others are a bit smaller. But it's a great sounding amp, brilliant amp for anyone who is learning guitar and loves the sound of Marshalls. Hope it goes well. Best of luck with the auction. See the item description for more information about postage, payments and all that stuff. Best of luck.